Here's my lifestyle in August 2026. I am maximizing my energy as defined in your worldview. You can view this resource by checking the description. I am a human. My lifestyle is how I live as a human. You must understand a definition of a human to understand why I am working towards family as a way to maximize my energy. Here's the definition of a human. A human is defined by the traits of humans who have reproduced over time. Here's an example. Suppose there are multiple humans, and each humans have certain traits. The group of humans with traits who reproduce will pass their traits down to their children, and their children will have these traits with the exception of a few mutations. The groups who did not reproduce will not have any traits reflected in the next generation. So, over time, the human is defined by those, specifically who are having sex, because sex is how humans reproduce. So you can argue that you must have a sexual drive to be human, because humans are defined by those with sexual drives in the same way that humans are defined by those with skin cells and bones. Emotions are a trait humans have, and your mindset argues that executing these emotions helps you maximize your energy. These emotions will also lead to reproduction. So, you can argue that every emotion is related to reproduction, but we make colloquial distinctions to separate colloquially sexual acts and every other emotion related to any other behavior. This video categorizes emotions into 5 urges to help you understand my lifestyle. The first urge includes any emotion you may have, and any emotion you have is driven by the relationship between yourself and your environment and the relation to your reproductive goals. You must understand that reproduction does not only refer to acts of sex, but also acts of reproduction such as child rearing and helping out members of your family. The second urge is a categorization of the first urge, but this urge relates more to sexual acts than acts from other urges. Here's an example. Child rearing involves the provision of food and shelter for sleep, but these are addressed in other urges. So, how does my second urge influence my lifestyle? I live in Dallas, Texas, and Dallas, Texas is the only place where I've had sex. I might be a father after an experience where I had sex in public. I was standing outside the club with my shirt off, and I met a girl. Allegedly, we conversed for about 30 minutes before going to location where we had sex, and I came inside of her. She did not make any provisional expectations of me, which makes me believe she had sex with me for my genetics, as opposed to my provisions. There are other details which I will not share which also reinforce this belief. The difference between a sexual and provisional behavior of a woman is defined in my video How Women Operate, which you can find in the description. You can also subscribe to watch videos which outline my theory on how a woman's sexual attraction works, which leads her to sexual behaviors. Here is a summary of these videos. A woman's sexual attraction is a result of her genetic expression, which selects for certain genetic traits in men. You can categorize these genetic traits into physical and social genetic traits. An example of physical traits would be traits which are unchanging, such as height, race, facial structure, hormonal profiles, and other traits which define the physical expression of a man. An example of social traits are traits which are expressed by the man and define how he interacts socially, because humans are social animals. These sexual selection traits come from the traits of the humans who reproduced from previous generations. So while you can argue that there are certain traits or trends of preferences for certain traits, there is not a trait which is going to guarantee a woman is sexually attracted to you. You can speculate that these traits would be related to traits which help you increase your sexual capabilities, resource acquisition, and social status within the tribe. There exists a lot of speculation on the internet about these traits, and here's an example of how complex this topic can actually be. There are studies which show that being too obese or being too skinny as a man will limit your sexual opportunities, which implies that women do not find these traits to be sexually attractive. However, you will also find that women do not find men who have the most muscle and the biggest size to always be the most attractive, because at a certain point, having too much muscle is going to limit your resource acquisition capabilities, and this would be reflected in the evolution of humans as time went on. You must also remember that humans, and men specifically, are not much stronger than each other relative to other animals, such that you could take the strongest man on earth and have them be at a disadvantage against toddlers when there are enough of them. And we haven't even considered whether those toddlers are armed with tools which stem from traits such as intelligence. So, having muscles is not the only trait a woman selects for, but it is a factor among many factors, which are as complex as this factor. You should also expect a woman to sexually prefer more than one man because the physical structures of humans indicate that we're not monogamous, and also there's an argument to be made that an optimal strategy for a woman would be to test multiple men. You may find yourself fighting other men for women who already find you sexually attractive because it is in the other men's best interest to limit the woman's sexual access to them and themselves only, and in certain cases, it does not matter that the woman has not actually selected that man. Here's an example. A man who shames a woman for cheating on his friend is upholding and enforcing a moral code established by men to designate which men will have sexual access to which women. And this is often done in order to maintain and increase your power. Because humans are more powerful in groups, and powerful groups can overpower groups which are not as powerful. How is this information related to my current lifestyle and my second urge? I've had sex with other women in Dallas, but these women make provisional demands of me. And I have also been threatened by other men in incidents related to women. I've been threatened by police. I've been threatened by bar staff. And I've been threatened by men who do not hold the level of authority as the first two groups, especially in the context of interacting with women. Now, there does not exist evidence of me fighting, and I do not look like I have been in a fight, but I'm still seeking the means to manage my relationships with these groups. And that is reflected in my current lifestyle. Specifically, I must seek out new relationships, and a relationship is not defined as a colloquial term where it refers to a boyfriend or girlfriend, but rather any relationship. The social urge is the third urge, and this urge is also relevant when it comes to the next two urges. The fourth urge is food. You can subscribe to watch a video where I outline my food setups in various environments. Your food setup is defined by your environment, and the city is not an environment where there are enough healthy animals for you to hunt for food. In addition, I do not farm for food, and so I must rely on a measurement of social favor, which is also known as money, in order to retrieve my food. The monetary cost of a food is often related to three things. The first thing is the margin. The second is the cost of transportation of the food from the production source. And the third is the cost of actually producing the food. The margin of a food is affected by how many alternatives there are. Because when there are no alternatives and you need the food, then the person who is selling you the food can charge whatever they want for you to have that food. There are enough alternatives in the city that you could eat for free. But the problem with eating for free is that free food, while not always the case, is often food which is left over because it is not valuable. Specifically, food banks and food pantries will offer food which are high in sugar, high in sodium, and low in protein. So you may have to resort to money to meet your caloric goals. And right now I track every food that I eat and I log it in an app called Macro Factor. This food tracking helps me maintain a low body fat percentage and is why I have a six-pack. I do not actually work out with weights as often as you would think, and the last time I remember working out with weights has been a few months ago. But what I do in order to lower my monetary cost of my food is use lower monetary cost transportation options, which often involve you walking or using a bus or a train. My food setups are optimizations based on this information. Here's an example. I may visit a store once a week and be able to store that food in bulk in a container for 7 days. And then I will have another container which can store either 4 days or 1 day of food. So I do not have to continue visiting the same container in order to save time while eating my food. You need food in order to recover, and you recover in your sleep. And emotions related to your sleep are involved within the last urge. I either sleep where I have sex or where I'm working, and you can view evidence of this in my previous video, how sleeping outside ended my virginity. You can subscribe to watch a video about my sleep system, which details how I perform these actions in any weather and any environment.